thought it was a person who was wanted, and they stopped him. I can tell you from being on the receiving end, I got pulled over by the cops. The officer walks up to my window. I thought it was a traffic stop. No, it was a vehicle stop. I had broken a traffic law. I was wondering why was he pulling me over? When I had in my hand, by the time he walked up to me, my driver's license, insurance, and registration for the vehicle, in the hand to him. He wasn't really interested in it. He wanted to know where I was coming from. Which by law I don't have to tell him, but I told him. I told him where I was coming from. And he looked at me, and he realized I am not the guy he was looking for, because I'm a man in his 70s, and the person he was looking for was a young individual in his 20s. I don't know the race of the person he was looking for. He didn't know. He was looking for a van. And he asked me, did you pull out of the Home Depot parking lot? We're in the Home Depot parking lot. I looked at him. No, Home Depot's closed. I'm not in the Home Depot parking lot. He says, all right, thanks. Go on your way, and thanks for pulling over. Not to be an ass. It was a case of mistaken identity based on the description of my vehicle, which matched the description of the vehicle that they were looking for. Doesn't mean that that officer acted inappropriately by pulling me over. He was conducting an investigation properly, based on the information that he had, and not like on a fishing expedition. Oh, you know what, I'm tripping over and stuff like that. No, he had a reason to pull me over. So, based on what we know in case in Maine, it appears it was just simply a case of mistaken identity. Now, what happened after that, I don't think anybody knows. A lot of people have reached conclusions, but I don't think anybody knows how that evolved from a vehicle stop to a shooting. And I will tell you, even if the guy was trying to get away, which there is some question over whether he was or he wasn't, he may have been, that does not justify shooting him. If that cop had pulled me over, got out of his car, and as he walked up to the side of the car, he said, oh no, I want to deal with this guy. And I floored it and took off with my van, which would be kind of stupid, because 100% of police cars were now on my van. But at any rate, had I done that, I would have been in violation of the law. And he had every right to pull me over, force me over, call for backup to force me over, but would he have the right to shoot me? No, I don't think so. Could he have shot me and said afterwards, well, you know, I wasn't in danger for my life, but public safety, the man was pulling away at a high rate of speed. Well, we don't shoot speeders. We pull them over and we cite them. Sometimes we pull them over and we arrest them. Truck drivers kill more people than anybody else behind them. We don't shoot them. That's not how we approach such things. So, I don't know whether this could very well be that this particular ICE officer or agent came to ICE from a police department and had gone through the academy, gone through the training, and should have known what he was doing, or could have been that he went through the abbreviated training that they give ICE officers and acted in a manner inappropriate. Or it could have been that he wasn't free from himself. We don't know. But we do know that 2 people have been killed. A 3rd person was killed actually today because he was running from ICE and he ran in front of a semi-truck. That's never going to end in a positive manner. And he got slammed by the truck. So some people say, well, I should have been chasing him. Other people say he shouldn't have been running. I would agree, he shouldn't be running. If I had run from that car, I this church law. But he would not have had a right to shoot me. So the question we have today is, are these ICE agents under control or having changing their procedure to a point where they're operating in a manner, generally speaking, that we in society find acceptable, but there were two exceptions and they happen to come within a week. It's a big country. One of the exceptions happened in Houston, the other exception happened in Maine. They were unfortunate, but as I pointed out earlier, cops sometimes make mistakes too, even if they have never trained in how to stop people on the street than are the ICE agents. What do you guys think of Mr. Congressman with the order which I see him on the stage? Today that order begins with stop followed by yelling.
Yeah, I mean, of course, yeah, I think he's excessive. These excessive actions. I mean, Trump's doubling down. I think is overplaying his hand. I mean, I think he's tone deaf on this one. Sometimes he intuitively gets the electorate. This is not one of those times, I think. I mean, if you look at, in general, polling on ICE, I mean, it goes, the disapproval floats from 62 to 65%, depending on the polls. The approval is only 33 to 40%. So, I mean, the approvals floats around the presidents, which is not really high. 65% of Americans polled think that ICE has gone too far in their actions where apprehensions and things are concerned. And 46% want Congress to cut their funding. We've seen polls where a majority, remember the one poll a month or two ago, I think 48%, the majority, it was 48 to 44 or something, wanted ICE disbanded completely. So I think that Trump is overplaying his hand here, and I think it's gonna, I think that this is an instance where I think he came in and shut the border, which was what, people wanted, right? I mean, this is, the amount of immigration coming in under Biden. Although I looked up some stuff, the Cato Institute did a very interesting study of this, and really, I mean, Biden deported more people than Trump, and then Trump won. Biden was not shy about deporting people. That Cato said was other factors, so it was interesting. But anyway, whatever the factors, people thought that too many people were getting in. Trump reversed that trend. I think you say mission accomplished for Trump. I think the ICE stuff has gone too far, and he's doubled down, and I think it's just going to hurt his approval, and it's going to further plummet the approval rating and people's feelings about ICE. I mean, that's just the way. I mean, you could, you can do border enforcement. You could do deportations. Obama was the deporter in chief, right? But he focused on border stuff. It wasn't as aggressive in cities all across the country, and things like this didn't happen. That's, so he was doing lots of deportations without the overall negative backlash because stuff like this wasn't happening. So, thanks, guys.
It's interesting that you mentioned the political ramifications. I look at it a little bit differently. It hadn't even occurred to me, the political ramifications. I care far less, and I'm not diminishing what you're saying at all. I think it's something I hadn't considered that I ought to have. But I care far less about the political ramifications than I do for the ramifications of the treatment of people on the streets, whether they are U.S. citizens or not. And as pointed out, they have shot and killed U.S. citizens, maybe justifiably, maybe not, but they have. And you don't have to be a U.S. citizen to be guaranteed protections under the U.S. citizen to be guaranteed protections under the Constitution. We don't want our law enforcement officers acting in an inappropriate manner, especially where people can get injured or killed. So I'm more concerned about them than I am about the president's political standing, and I'm sure you are as well when you raise that issue.
Of course, of course, it's insane. It's why most Americans disapprove, right? Because it's excessive and inhumane and awful.
I would like to propose that even if I were in the minority and approving of what ICE is doing and making all kinds of arguments, accepting the arguments that the administration is making, accurate or inaccurate, and I'm not suggesting what is and is not, because I don't know on some of the claims that he's making. It doesn't feel right when he says 70% of those being deported are criminals, and I guess we can suss that down even further by trying to...
What he might mean, Gary, is that they're violating the criminal section of Title 8, Chapter 1823. In that code, there's a civil procedure and a criminal procedure. And the criminal procedure has like a $250 fine and like a 6-month jail term. So that may be where he's getting his stats.
Right, so that's what I was going to say is, how do we define criminal? And the way you define it, the way I define it, and the way another person defines it may be different. So when we are communicating, we don't really have a common denominator on that. But, when you're the head of any institution and you appoint people to run departments within that institution, you're supposed to appoint people who you trust will carry on your policies and do so in a prudent manner. And so there are people who oversee these immigration enforcement operations. In fact, the guy that was involved in overseeing it was pulled out, and another guy was pulled in because the president and the populace had lost confidence in the first guy, and the second guy had the reputation of being a strong enforcer, but a fair enforcer of the statutes. That's who's supposedly running these operations now. Somebody who we can put some faith in, who's going to make the right decisions. It doesn't mean they're always going to make the right decision, but generally speaking. So after this incident, he decides, let's hold off for a minute on the vehicle stops, and let's take a look at how we're doing this. Let's take a look at what people on the local field office level are being told that they're supposed to be doing. Because I don't believe, by the way, in holding a law enforcement officer responsible, and it happens all the time, for taking actions that they were told were the proper procedures. That they were taught were the proper procedures. This is how you conduct yourself. Then he goes out and conducts himself in that manner and gets in trouble for doing what he was told to do. That's a management problem. So maybe there's a management problem here. Maybe these are just two outliers that happen to occur in quick succession that's put our focus on something unduly. It's possible. But the prudent thing would be suspend the vehicle stops for a minute, take a breather, take a look at it, and come out with a conclusion. Maybe we're doing everything right. Reinstate them. Or maybe it's a good practice, but we have to modify things in such and such a manner. Then reinstate them after people are properly trained. The guy the president put into this position to restore public confidence in the manner in which immigration officers and agents act on the streets is almost immediately and publicly countermanded by the President of the United States, who overrides the decision on truth, freaking social of all places, and tells the ICE agents to go out there and conduct what he calls traffic stops once again. Scott, I lose confidence in a president who does that. What's wrong with taking prudent steps, even if it's only a public relations move, to give the population some confidence that they are reviewing this, why not let it play out? Why is it so important for him to insist in such a public manner and in such a degrading manner to the people who are making the decisions? Get back out there and make those traffic stops again. It's just unfathomable that the person that we elected to be the chief executive of this country is acting in such a manner.
Well, and who was the guy? Who's the guy he put in charge in Minnesota after is it Holman?
Tom Holman.
Yeah, Tom Holman. Yeah, I mean, that was an instance where there was some prudence, right? There was a de-escalating move, right? And I think for some people, it was a reassurance, you know, that some of the cowboys and excessive violence freaking dying, you know, that was a de-escalating move. I think that there was some prudence there, right? It showed people that he was taking this seriously and the excesses seriously. I agree with you. I think he's doubling down, and I think that's more people. You know, I think more people will be harmed, and ultimately, this is not what Americans want. If you look at public opinion is clear. It's not. Americans are not for this, right? It's not what they signed up for.
I want those traffic stops, and I don't care what the experts say. My God, it's my decision. I'm the president of the United States, and we're going to have these traffic stops, whether they're good or not. That's our president, and that's our president not just on this issue, as we all know. It's just, I guess he's always been like this. It's fine, there are a lot of people like that, but they're not running the country. Alan, followed by Marshall. Believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen who are uninitiated, the sound of silence from Alan's microphone is a good thing, because Alan is a sole proprietor of a small business in Texas, and when he is not answering the call to the microphone, he is answering the call of a customer, and that means moolah shmoolah in Alan's pocket. And as I always tell him, business comes first. Clubhouse comes second. And Scott, I passed that information along to another person who was a CEO of a company who had to make the same difficult decision. And I think it's the correct decision. If Clubhouse is getting in the way of running a business, you ought not to be on Clubhouse. Marshall, followed by Steve. Now, Marshall's a different case when he's not answering. He's not running a business. Marshall. Steve, followed by Bluey.
Yeah, hey Gary. Gary, I think there's two elements.
By the way, how you been feeling? I want to ask you that.
Well, it's been an arduous recovery. I guess when you get old, you don't recover as fast from getting cut on, Gary.
Oh, I know a youngin' who got cut in. He's in his early 30s, and he's having a dickens of a time recovering because of the surgery and the manner of the surgery. He has to learn to walk all over again. So I feel, to quote one of your favorite presidents, I'm sure, I feel your pain.
Okay, that's good, Gary. Yeah, Gary, I think there's two elements at play here. I think there may be some undue aggression, but I think the general public has to take into account their actions too and the environment that they're creating. For instance, like some of the things we see in Minneapolis. And then what's that detention center in New Jersey? Do you know where I'm talking about?
Delaney Detention Center.
Yeah,
Delaney Hall, actually, in Newark, New Jersey. Yep.
Yeah. The stuff that's going on there, That's not peaceful protest. Out and out obstruction of law enforcement. So, me dealing with some police departments, I can tell you if a police are conducting an arrest or something, and they're already in a heightened state of agitation, and you run up on them and start wolfing in their face, you may think you have right, and to some degree at a certain distance you may have, but you are inflaming the situation in a way that 9 times out of 10 will not turn out like you intended.
Happened to me once, Steve.
Yeah.
This is kind of an interesting story. And you talk about mistaken identity. I'm driving down this dark road, and I see on the sidewalk a bicycle on its side, and I see a car that had come up from the wrong direction and hopped the curb. It was right up against that bicycle. And of course I thought, oh my God, somebody just got hit by a car. Looks like maybe a drunk driver or something,
Yeah.
So I said, let me go and see. I'm going to dial 911. I'm going to render aid, whatever. I pull over. I run back there. And there are a bunch of people standing around. And they jumped that I ran up on them. They were shocked that somebody ran up on them. And they turned around at me and they said, what are you doing here? And I looked at them and I said, are you the police? They could have gone very, very badly, but they were all undercover. It did not look like a police car, and it looked like an accident, not somebody, not the cops stopping some guy on a bicycle. I mean, I could have gotten a little tune-up there. Could happen.
I can tell you an instance. I used to run an independent trucking operation. Nothing big, just a couple trucks. But I was in Wisconsin one time, and I got caught in one of these, I think they call them wolf packs, where the state police will go out and they'll do targeted stops, and they're just looking to pick up stuff that's normally not taken in by the locals. Well, I get in this one area at a way station, and they do a truck check on me, for safety and stuff. Then they found out that my logbook wasn't right. Well, anyone that knows independent truckers, sometimes that's what happens to get to your delivery on time. So anyway, I told the guy, because he's going to find out anyway, I said, well, you may want to look at the logbook. There could be. So he looks at it and he said, you're going to have to come inside. I said, well, I figured as much. So we walk inside and we're talking. I'm not getting angry. And they're looking at my logbook, and the state police, they're looking at each other, just snarking back and forth. And I said, well, guys, I said, you know what it is here? I said, sometimes you get the rabbit and sometimes the rabbit gets away. I said, you caught the rabbit. I said, that's all there is to this. And they kind of laughed. And there wasn't any point in being confrontational at this point. I had nothing to gain. They had me dead to rights. Beside me, on the other hand, was this guy. He's deciding he's going to show the state police, what a macho guy he is, and he's wolfing at them and stuff. And when I got through with what I was doing, I explained to the state police what happened. I said, look, I had to be in Wisconsin, then down in Charlotte. I said, there was no way I could make this work. And I said, I got to make truck payments. I said, it wasn't a matter of me trying to do anything other than survive. But anyway, the guy, he said, Mr. Wine, he said, if I didn't have to, I probably wouldn't write you a ticket. He said, but there is a safety issue here. I said, I don't know. But, it went smoothly. On the other hand, this guy beside me, he was just like me. They caught him, and he's wolfing, and he's getting an entirely different reaction. Now, I'm not saying you got to capitulate to everything, to every law enforcement, but I'm saying the manner and way that you interact with these people can bring a lot of different responses. And the things that we're seeing people running up in these guys' faces, wolfing on them with a bullhorn and different things. If you think that's going to get a good response and you're not going to jack these guys up and they're not going to be willing to put some mace in your face or something like that, and all you're trying to do is get a YouTube moment, so this kind of stuff I think is...
cases that bring this to light again today, Steve, that's not what was happening. You know, there were no bullhorns or mace. There were actual bullets in somebody's face. You know, so
but what I'm talking about, Gary, is these guys are like anyone else. They can see this stuff going on all over the place, and if they think that every time they're getting out of the car, they're going to have someone running up on them, wolfing on them, they're going to be in an agitated state to start with. Does that justify the shooting? I don't know enough about it. I doubt that it does. But I'm saying the confluence of these two factors, and it, you know, I've heard this before, and this is probably correct because they're trying to ramp up so quickly to fill spots. There probably is a training issue here, and you know, the seasoned veteran, he might react a little calmer than someone that's just been thrown out after I don't know how long they take to train these guys. So there may be an element to that, but you know, the general public, you go up wolfing on someone that feels they're in a dangerous situation, you do it continuously, you're not going to get the best reaction. And especially if you truly believe that these guys are undertrained to begin with. So long and short of, I think it's a confluence of two things mixing together in the witch's brew that's not coming out very well, Gary.
well, which president number is Donald Trump?
47, right?
Yes. How many days training did these guys and gals get?
47.
They got 47 days of training because it's the 47th president of the United States.
That can't be the reason for the training period, Gary.
It can't?
Are you
I think
serious?
the training period has been trimmed down from like a couple of months, like 6 weeks or something. What I recall.
150 days to 47, gentlemen.
No, see, I heard the 47 days was more of an estimate. I looked that up and I was not able to find any verification for it. Because I said the same thing about 6 months ago and I was wrong.
Well, you know, and here again, the scope and scale of the operation that they're trying to do. I ran into this on some work I'd done down here on gas pipelines too. That the scale of the project and the number of people available to carry. To be honest, there's some unqualified people out there doing the job. So anytime you scale up and you scale up this quickly and you're trying to multiply your orders and you're trying to scale into a lot of larger operation, inevitably you're
Yeah, Steve, it's the run fast and break things model.
Well,
right? You scale up real quick, you end up not training everybody the way they should be trained, and a couple of those people end up screwing up. We don't know whether they screwed up or not. Obviously, killing somebody who's not the subject of an investigation is the wrong way to go, right? But, like, we don't, for the guy in Houston, like, from what I heard or was reported, the guy in Houston tried to flee the cops, which Gary addresses in the beginning. We don't shoot speeders or people that flee, right? So that indicates that somebody pulled their weapon a little too quickly.
well, that could be, but I mean, you know how you'd mitigate that? You'd mix the younger guys or the less trained guys in with seasoned professionals, so that you'd have the pros lead the unit. That seemed to me the way you'd want to do that. Where, like, if you're going out, you'd have a guy that's been there 10 years, done it, seen it, been involved in all types of operations could be, and he could kind of talk the younger guys down. But like I say, you know, if all you see nonstop is this kind of aggressive action towards these guys every time they walk in.
I don't know that that's all that they see in Houston. Maybe they do, and I don't know that that's all that they see in Maine. Maybe they do. I wouldn't want to presume one way or the other, but you oversee
I'm
the
just
top.
saying,
in your
I'm
town?
just saying,
Yeah, all your cops are certified by the state of West Virginia. How long is their training period?
I think it's like 4 to 6 months.
Yeah,
Something.
so during that
Something.
massive hiring blitz, Homeland Security temporarily reduced the basic training academy. I'm reading this from all places, Al Jazeera, but I don't think it's inaccurate. For new immigrant and customs enforcement deportation officers to 47 days. This was a significant reduction from the traditional roughly 5 months. Now, maybe it's coincidental that it was the 47 days. I don't know.
One of the things that our town has as mandatory before you're even allowed to go to the State Police Academy to do your training is a psychological profile. We send those guys out to have a psychological profile done on them. And I think that that's something that no matter what law enforcement, if you're going to give a guy a gun and you're going to give him the force of law up into taking life, you better make sure that the guy's playing with the full deck. So that's the first thing we do. We have the psychological profile run on the guy, and then if he passes that and there's nothing glaring about the psychology of the guy, then we send him on to the academy. But we don't send anyone to an academy without the psychological profile being run on.
I'm with you on that. If they fail the psych eval, they really shouldn't be agents.
So they do psych evaluations on prospective ICE agents. It's supposedly a rigorous pre-employment medical and psychological screening to ensure that they possess the emotional stability, mental resilience, and judgment required for federal law enforcement duty. That's what I'm reading now. I'm presuming what I'm reading is accurate. If it's not, somebody could correct what I'm reading, but that's what I'm told. So Steve, we'll go to Bluey, followed by Joe.
Thank you. You know, I've been reading your Substack, and I'm going to tie your most recent Substack to this, Gary, if I may. Your Substack title is to the effect of, if someone says they plan to kill you, you should believe them. And I think everyone in the room should read your Substack, and I think it's accurate. And how am I going to tie that to this? Well, we can easily see hundreds of examples of the progressive community calling for people to resist ICE. You can see the progressive community saying, if ICE seeks to arrest you, don't comply with them. Figure out a way to obstruct them. Figure out a way to drive away. The progressive, or certain members of the progressive community.
Who said they were told to drive away?
Well, Marshall, please let me finish.
No, you need to answer that question.
Okay,
Who said they were going to drive away?
On X right now, okay, if you want a source.
Yes, I want a source. Who told bunches of people to drive away from the cops?
On X, I'm going to read this to you, please, Marshall.
From whom?
Members of the progressive community advise passive resistance, the same way Martin Luther King resisted during the
Okay, passive resistance is not driving away. That's different.
I think
driving away is active resistance.
An honest observer can find many examples of people getting advised.
You're the one making the claim, not me, which means you're responsible for providing the information.
I will post links on the Substack, okay?
No, just post them in the Facebook chat.
Okay, Marshall, I love you more than anyone in this room, but you can't expect me to post things. The room chat function in this room is disabled, so just allow me to continue.
I expect you to go to the messenger chat and post things in the messenger chat. That's what I expect.
I will post it in the messenger chat. Okay, everyone in the room is invited to go to the messenger chat and see whether I've substantiated what I said. So,
and by the way, to your plug, which I appreciate, everybody in the room is invited to the messenger chat to see what I wrote on Substack. It's linked there.
It's excellent. So basically, my read is that the progressive community of America, they have beliefs. They believe in what they believe, and they believe that resisting ICE is the ethical thing to do. And I'm not going to debate with progressives whether it's ethical to resist ICE, but I will tell you that Chairman Mao wrote a book that said that the secret to having a society in revolution is to provoke the government into killing a lot of the rebels. Because the more of the rebels that are killed by the government, the more sympathy you get. Now, everyone in the room who studied why Chairman Mao was so successful in his revolution. Will say that was a very smart technique, and it resulted in. So for that reason, every fair-minded, ethical person in the room should research this, because I think there's ample evidence that our friends in the progressive community are deliberately provoking ICE into committing these shootings, because they believe the more innocent people shot by ICE, the more it helps the progressive community in the upcoming election. And I will close by saying, and I want to normalize using less than the allotted 5 minutes. You don't have to use your full 5 minutes. You can get your point across succinctly. I was the only one in this room that said the majority of Hispanic men would vote for Trump. And it turns out no one in the room agreed, but it turns out the majority of Hispanic men in America did vote for Trump. And they voted for Trump because they wanted mass deportations.
No, the majority of those who voted for Trump. Not the majority. There's a difference. If you look at the actual voting population, there were about 70 million voters that sat out the vote.
I'm talking only about Hispanic men, no other demographic. So just let me finish, Marshall.
Hispanic men did not vote for Trump. I live in an area where we outperformed the area.
We've gone through this another way. Everyone in the room is invited to just go to Google and say, who did the majority of Hispanic men vote for? I submit the majority of Hispanic men voted for Trump because they want mass deportations. And mass deportations benefit the Hispanic community. And I'm going to land my plane here, so don't interrupt me, Marshall. Because of mass deportations, the rents in Hispanic neighborhoods are way down. Everyone in the room can see by Googling it. Landlords complain that rents in Hispanic neighborhoods are down 20 or 30%, because it turns out when you deport millions of people, there are a lot of empty apartments and landlords lower rents. So I will close by saying that those people who are against mass deportations are defying the will of the majority of Hispanic men. And if you're against mass deportations, you are causing the rents to go up. And I have ample proof, and I'm sick of Marshall interrupting me, and I'm done speaking.
That is an interesting argument, and I don't know whether I follow the logic fully, but it's an interesting argument. So, look, when you say progressive organizations, that's painting a group of people with a broad brush, and I think it's accurate and prudent to suggest that we see which organizations to which you refer. Not that I'm questioning your veracity, but I think people need to be able to suss that out. And in some cases, it may actually be worse than you suggested with some of these organizations, because we are now learning from their own pronouncements as recently as a summit that the Democratic Socialists held last night, that they are not interested in working the legislative process to force change. They're trying to force change through other means, or as the communists would say, by whatever means necessary. So there's starting to be an overlap, and I know Scott has a problem with this because, yes, there's a difference between being a socialist and a communist. And there's a difference between being a progressive and a socialist. But there are organizations that profess to be socialist organizations that are gravitating toward policies that are closer aligned with the communists than those particular policies are with the socialists. I will say that the preeminent organization that has been advising people, not to say that people are not influenced by other organizations, of course they are, but the preeminent organization that has been advising people on how to respond if approached on the street by ICE agents is the ACLU. And here are the 3 things the ACLU tells people, and I think that these are prudent suggestions, at least from the ACLU. If stopped by ICE in public or on the street, ask, and by the way, they hand out cards to people in targeted neighborhoods. It's a wallet-sized card that you can carry. I believe it's in multiple languages. It says, ask if you are free to go. Ask the agent, am I free to leave? If they say yes, calmly walk away. 2, exercise the right to remain silent. You do not have to answer questions about where you were born, your citizenship, or how you entered the country. 3, show valid documents only. If you are a non-citizen over 18 and have valid immigration documents, you should show them. However, the ACLU strongly warns never to provide fake documents or lie, because that would be against the law, and you would be putting yourself in legal jeopardy by doing so. Jules, followed by old Raj.
I'm hesitant to say fuck the ACLU, but I'll come out and say it. Not what you said, Gary, about what they're, what they advise people, the history, and just what the organization
I'm not saying this to promote the organization any more than I was quoting Al Jazeera to promote Al Jazeera. I'm just providing information.
Okay, getting back on topic, you brought up a very important thing, Gary, about that they were undertrained. The ICE is undertrained. By the way, ICE is a government agency, a law enforcement agency that we should all give our total respect to, like you did, Gary, or like you do. But I think they were undertrained. And let's use it 47 days was the amount of time they were trained. And let's say, I'll also use your quote, Gary, it takes 5 months. So let's say 47 days, 5 months. Okay? So within that period of time that ICE wasn't available, between 47 days and 5 months, how many children are going to be raped? How many children are going to be killed, or grown-ups raped or killed from illegal aliens? Even if they're 10, if 20, 30, 40, who knows? How many are going to sell drugs that kill people? Whatever that number is, I want those fuckers out of the country.
What about the non-illegal aliens who are committing these crimes at a greater rate, not only in numbers, but in per capita than the illegal aliens? Do you want those fuckers out of the country too?
Who are you talking about?
Who are not
commit crimes at a greater rate.
I'm answering this question.
You mean Americans that are committing crimes?
The question I asked.
Yeah, go ahead.
The question I asked was, what about the non-illegal aliens who are committing those kinds of crimes, not just in greater number, but in greater numbers per capita than the illegal aliens? Do you want those fuckers removed from the country as well?
Well, if they're Americans, I want them imprisoned. I want those fuckers imprisoned. If they came here illegally, I want those fuckers out of the country.
Well, why not imprison them? Like if I had done it, I'd get imprisoned. So if some person who's here, quote unquote, illegally does it, why not afford them the same opportunity to be incarcerated as I would be? Why does he get off the hook and then you deport him?
Because the floodgate, if it was a normal illegal alien, I might agree. And what I mean by normal is the floodgates were opened with, with millions of illegal aliens.
Right, but the majority, vast majority of them, in spite of what the president says, the statistics will show we're not criminals coming across the border. And so what? So they're here illegally. It doesn't matter if you're acting appropriately. You don't need to be incarcerated. And if you're acting inappropriately, I would agree. You need to be incarcerated. Why do they get a ticket out of jail? Why do they get to pass go and not go to jail first? If this was a monopoly game, why are they allowed to go back to their home country? And if you or I do it, we have to be incarcerated for it.
Well, some are incarcerated first and then deported. I mean, how much jail space do we have? Well, I want all those
Well,
fuckers out.
apparently a lot of jail space.
How much jail space do
Certainly,
you want?
you'll have to wait your turn there, see, if you don't mind. Apparently a lot of jail space because we keep building jail space for the migrants. So I guess we got a lot of jail space. So might as well use it.
We don't know if we're putting migrants in there.
You know, I told you had to wait your turn, and you weren't listening. And maybe, I think you were saying that you were presenting yourself as an American-born natural citizen. So unlike an illegal migrant, you don't have an excuse for not understanding the English that comes out of my mouth. Jules, go ahead.
Well, okay, you were making a point. I just want to get rid of those people that don't belong in this country. That's my point. And we handle our criminals in a certain way too. Unfortunately, I don't even know how sanctuary cities are still legal. I mean, where's the legality of that? Why doesn't that go to the Supreme Court?
The reason they're legal is because on minor crimes they don't call federal enforcement. On things like murder, they always call federal enforcement. I only know this because I looked it up. So things like people who are murderers, they always contact federal agents about it. Always.
Well, okay, but you keep butting in, Marshall, but that's your MO, so that's okay. I just want them out of the
I
country.
blended in because I'm a moderator and because
It's
you
okay,
need
it's
some
okay,
information.
it's okay. You answered my question too, so, but I don't know. I think if you spoke to an audience, Gary, of families of victims from illegal aliens, rape, murder, and all those horrible crimes, I don't see how. I don't even think you'd be able to speak to them because it's such horrendous crimes are committed against them.
Well, obviously, for the individual crimes, they get the statistics don't give the victims or the families of the victims any solace, knowing that it's, But I'm just saying, if you want to throw people out of the country because they commit heinous crimes, well, then why not throw you or me out of the country if we commit heinous crimes?
Because they
The
didn't
dude's going to prison, faggot!
place. And how about what Governor Walz just did? What was that? He let a rapist go who was in prison, so he wouldn't be, extradited to another country. I mean, you're hearing these crazy things. It's just insane how we treat them. I don't think they should be treated as Americans. American criminals should be treated a certain way, and illegal aliens should be treated another way. You could give statistics. I don't even question your statistics, but I think I can because everybody coming in is illegal. We're now separating illegal people from illegal people who murder, illegal people who sell drugs. We're just illegal people who rip off the system and get benefits they shouldn't be getting. Why are we doing that? Illegal is illegal.
Well, I think the definition of illegal, as we discussed earlier, is something that I think is up to debate when it comes to the term illegal migrant. But I want to talk about this.
Why is it up to debate? Isn't it?
It's by the way it's used, by the way the term is used. You might argue that if a person is in the country undocumented, that automatically makes them illegally in the country. Others would say they are undocumented in the country, and there are arguments to be made for both positions. I'm not arguing one way or the other. I'm just saying that's why we have a problem, just like on something else we discussed earlier. When we were talking about the opening of the Strait of Hormuz, it's open, it's closed, it's open, it's closed. What's the definition of open? What's the definition of closed?
Open! Closed! Hello?
Consensus in this country over what it is to say a person is in the country illegally.
You know, Gary, you brought up a good point. Just the definition of things. Is it open? Is it closed? Well, the answer is you can't, the word is it closed? It has to be expanded. It's closed because it's open because you just can't say is it open or closed. And that's probably the answer to a lot of the debates we're having. It's not fully developed what the question really is. You know, is it straight open? Is it closed? Yes, the ships going through there are getting rocketed by Iran if it's open or closed.
I don't know whether, I don't know who's telling the truth and who isn't when it comes to that anyway.
I'll tell you one thing, it's dangerous. It's open or it's closed.
Well, I know, we're not talking about the straight
I know,
moves. I'm
I
just
know.
using it as an example. So here's what Tim Walz, I just want to
Go ahead, go
go
ahead.
to the records to explain what Tim Walz did.
Go ahead.
He and the state pardon board granted a pardon intended to block a man's deportation. It surrounds a guy named Tao Lu Vang. This is from the New York Times. A 42-year-old Laotian national convicted of criminal sexual conduct in 2006 for abusing a 10-year-old girl. Vang had originally avoided prison through a plea agreement, which, by the way, is another issue that defies understanding. You mean to tell me that he abused a 10-year-old and was able to plea it down to where he didn't serve any time?
That's right, repeatedly.
But anyways, he had originally avoided prison through a plea agreement, but was given a federal deportation order. I don't think anybody would argue that that deportation order was out of order. So, in June of this year, the state prison pardons board of pardons, which consists of the governor, the attorney general, who happens to be Keith Ellison, and the chief, Natalie Hudson, voted unanimously to grant Vang a pardon. According to the New York Times, the primary factor in the state's decision was a letter from the victim herself, who stated she had processed the trauma, made peace, forgiven Vang, and explicitly requested the board grant pardon. So that's what happened.
That can make me vomit, the whole thing.
Yeah, I just wanted to put it into perspective.
I didn't see that in the New York Times yet, but that's something that first I want to throw my salute to Bluey. I liked what he said, and I want to end by where I started. I bet you those fuckers, the ACLU, approved of the whole thing. I land my plane.
So, Jules, really, the next time you come up, you should let us know what you really think about the ACLU. You should be couching it in euphemisms. Just let us know straight out.
I will.
Okay, thanks. Old Raj, followed by Hassana.
Thank you, Gary. I think the last two commentators both were highly useless in their comments and completely off. I noticed how Jules likes to bitch him.
Well, wait a minute. Let's say with the exception of the endorsement of my article on Substack now.
With the exception of the article and endorsement on Substack.
Thank you. Now you may continue.
Jules bitched and moaned about how we need to deport criminals, and yes, I'm all for that. But were the two people that were shot in the last 2 days criminals? I think the answer is no. They weren't even targeted. I mean, the insanity continues, and I have to ask how many innocent people do have to die before people start getting upset and start protesting? I think it's a load of shit, Gary, that people nip and tug and chew all the way around the issue. Nobody bites into the meat. And I discussed this with Marshall earlier, but how come there's no cameras? This money was appropriated three months and a week ago, so 100 days ago.
A lot of money, too.
$20 million. And nobody can give you an answer as to why they don't have them. Nobody. You know, you lost the crazy bitch out of South Dakota on this job, and now you've replaced it by, frankly,
So I can actually answer your question as to why they don't have cameras. The bill that would have specified they have cameras got held up over masking. The Democrats insisted that masking 100% of, like, no masking 100% of the time be part of the bill. Meaning there would never be a point where ICE agents could wear masks. Despite the fact that there are some times when they actually get the bad hombres, the people Trump was really talking about, the folks that Obama deported, who were criminals, smugglers, sex traffickers, where you do need to wear a mask. That bill couldn't get agreed on because the Democrats wanted masking all the time, and the Republicans were like, no, we can't have masking all the time, that doesn't work, and they couldn't come to an agreement. So you didn't get the body cameras in the way they were supposed to. I think that's the actual answer to your question.
Yeah, but the money was appropriated first week of April. We're in the
Yes, sir. No, you're right about that.
And what are we waiting on? I mean, and also, what states do have the cameras? Because we sure have 2 random states where people don't have them. Also, you're not going to get an independent investigation on these crimes. On what, frankly, I call on these murders. You're not going to get cities investigated, the state, Texas Rangers were called in. You're not going to get any help from the federal government. They're not going to release or share anything. I mean, the whole thing's a shit show. And I'm going to tell you, we'll have more people that are going to be killed on this, and I guess nobody cares. I mean, Marshall's brought it up. He's brought it several times. But I don't understand the passiveness of Americans that just sit there and go, oh, I guess they're chill. I mean, I guess that's just the price you pay for going door to door. Also, when are we gonna have some cars with some federal agencies identified? If you got bumped from behind from a car you had no idea was, you would probably ram into it too. What if you had family in your car? You're gonna sit there and do nothing? I mean, there is no focus. There's no understanding. Can somebody in this room, anybody, tell me how these people even got targeted to begin with? I mean, what kind of due diligence was done, or what background were they investigating? Because in both cases, they ended up with the wrong people anyway. And Gary's right. I mean, the 47 days is a reason, because it was the 47th president. He ultimately reduced it, or, as I tell people over and over again, he may not be doing it, but Stephen Miller sure is, because he's our de facto president on every topic. With that, I'll land my plane. Thank you all.
Yeah, there's no federal law with regard to the states cops wearing body cams. In every state, according to Custom Signals, which does an analysis of and is an advocate for actually traffic enforcement by police across the country. So they've done extensive research on this. There are several states with broad statutory mandates with regard to body cams. Those happen to be Colorado, Connecticut, Delaware, Illinois, Indiana, Maryland, New Jersey, New Mexico, New York, and South Carolina. And then there's states with conditional mandates, California, Florida, Georgia, Nevada, and Utah. But there are states without statewide mandates altogether. So it's like Maine, Michigan, Massachusetts, Idaho, and Mississippi. It's a mixed bag is what it is, old Raj. But so I don't know whether we should compare them not putting body cams on their cops, like in Steve's community. I don't know whether they have body cams, but it's a very small community and they may not be able to afford it, if it's left up to the communities. But as you rightly point out, they were given and mandated to put the cameras on, and I get the sense as well, they've been obfuscating every time they've been asked about this. And only today, they've agreed that to ensure that one agent in each field office during any operation be wearing a body cam. One. As a start to the program. That's a slow rollout of the program. Is it by design? I don't know. Is it because of the statutory limitations caused by our do-nothing Congress, as Marshall suggests? Could be. That's Sarah, followed by Linda. Hasana. Linda, followed by Moose.
Hi everybody. Is ICE still out of control again? I mean, I personally think they are. I just didn't know like ICE to, I guess prior to all this things going down, I didn't know that approach people on the street and ask them like, are you a U.S. citizen? Were you born here? Just, you know, randomly stopping people, asking them for IDs, not showing their face. It's just kind of like scary because like, I'm American born and U.S. citizen, and I mean, my dad is Somali and my mom's Black American, and I love Somali and I had a Somali name, so I wouldn't appreciate like ICE just walking up to me, have they have done other people demanding to know, you know, it's just bizarre to me. I feel like that's none of your business, you know. I don't carry my passport with me everywhere I go, you know, or my birth certificate. I do carry like my driver's license with me, but a real ID doesn't necessarily mean that you're a citizen. So I'm like, why do I have to prove that to you? I think it's just bizarre. My siblings live in St. Cloud. They're naturalized citizens. So is my stepmother. And they live in St. Cloud, Minnesota. And I mean, they were afraid to like leave the house because of all the things that were going on in Minnesota and how bad it was. And there just was all the chaos I think that ICE caused. But if you, you know, I get what you're saying, Gary, and I'll wrap it up. I get what you're saying about the argument between calling someone undocumented versus legal. You know, I've read about that. I agree, you know, with the panel of people that if you're here like committing crimes, you know, you're hurting children and people, like, you know, you're committing crimes, you gotta go. Like, you absolutely should not be here. If you're coming into this country and committing crimes, you gotta go. But as far as like coming after like the person that's been here for like 20 something years and they overstay their visa, I don't know. I feel like it's just kind of overkill. And I think some cases too, there could be some compassion there because I kind of put myself in another person's shoes. You never know what could happen, and you have to flee and leave your country for different reasons. You know, people come here for all reasons to, you know, usually better themselves, better their lives, get an education, make money, things like that. I think if you're going to come here and be productive and contribute to the economy and be a productive member of society, I mean, I definitely want people ideally to be legally here, but I think there are some circumstances that happen. But I don't agree with like rounding people up and things like that. It's just kind of scary. And that's all I want to say. Thank you.
I think that's one of the. I think that's like on the right hand side of the aisle. That's one of the problems, though. People on the right hand side of the aisle, by their politicians, were promised for the better part of 40 years that the law would be enforced, and the law doesn't make an exception. The law says if you're here without documentation, you are here in contravention of law. And normally that's processed as a civil matter, right? But sometimes it could be processed as a criminal matter, right? And I think like, you know, a lot of people, I wouldn't say myself included, because I live in a place where I'm right next to Mexico, and we have lots of folks that are undocumented. But I think you have a lot of people on the right-hand side of the aisle who say, no, I have to obey the law, and if I get stopped for speeding, they don't ask whether I'm a citizen or not. They don't ask any of those questions. They just ask if I was speeding, right? And so those people think to themselves, okay, well, if the law says you're not allowed to be here, well, guess what? You're not allowed to be here. And that sucks. It sucks that you've been here 20 years. It sucks that you've been in a place where we haven't enforced the law on you, but, you know, the law says you can't be here, and there's no way around that, right? If you read the law, that's what the law says. And so I think you have a lot of those people who are just unwilling to give. Maybe they should be, but I think you have a lot of people on the right-hand side. Again, not myself, but a lot of people who say to themselves, well, there really isn't an excuse for this. The law says you can't be here, that's what it says, so you gotta go.
Well, here's a mitigating factor to that argument, and it comes from the Republican side of the aisle. You know, they created this problem, or this administration created this problem. If you want to get rid of people, to use a previous caller's crass terminology, get the fuck out, you still have to do it in a legal manner, correct?
Yeah, look, I think there should be some allowance for this, right? If you've been
Well,
here
no,
15...
I'm not asking about allowance. I'm asking about if any person that Jules, for example, who is very articulate and obvious in his point of view, want deported. In order to deport them, there is a process by which, under the law, the government is required to go before deporting them, right?
Yes, the government is supposed to go before some sort of immigration court before deporting them.
Right.
Unless they have permission otherwise.
So,
And there are conditions under which expedited removal is legal.
right, but in general, you have to go before an immigration law judge.
Yeah, in general, you have to go before an immigration law judge who's under the executive
And it's the
branch.
president and his administration that's pushing the deportations. So when the president returned to office, there were 726 permanent immigration judges. The administration purged the courts. They fired.
Yeah, they fired the people that would do the jobs. Agreed. I don't disagree with that. They made it so that it was harder to get it done. That's not something I disagree with. They
I know you're
did.
not. I'm not saying that you're disagreeing. I'm not arguing with you. I'm trying to make a point.
Gary, I need to ask a question from audience when you guys have.
Okay, I'll get to you in a second. So between 100 and 115 judges that the administration deemed too lenient or unaligned with this mass deportation agenda, gone. An almost equal number of experienced judges, this is according to NPR, resigned, retired early, or accepted buyouts due to plummeting staff morale and pressure to fast-track cases, which I will point out in case people are unaware. They were overwhelmed by cases, so many, even before Trump took office a second time. So by early 2026, according to NPR, the active judge corps had plummeted by roughly a quarter, dipping well below 600 judges. 12 immigration courts lost more than half of their judges, and 2 courts, and those courts were running on skeleton crews, and 2 courts were closed. So how can you say on the one hand, we need to get rid of these people, and I'm coming in as president, we're going to get rid of these people. Yes, 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 we're all in favor of that. But in reality, you make it more difficult to get rid of the people. How do we reconcile that? I think the problem
That
is...
he's not as serious as he says he is. That the Obama administration at this time in his presidency was more serious than the Trump administration is. And then if the Trump administration were truly serious, they would have copied what the Obama administration did. I understand the Obama administration at this time in the second term had processed far more people than the Trump administration has. And they did it without shooting people, and they did it without people dying. So
I think one of the problems is that the public is fed by people like me, I guess, a steady diet of headlines. And we have trained ourselves willingly to swipe left and swipe right, and we got enough information in 3 seconds. That's what we're training ourselves, and our children, it's going to be even worse. They're addicted to
the
TikTok.
attention spans are just about nothing. They're unwilling to look and read articles which are longer than a paragraph. And even if that's supposing they can get through the paragraph.
So because we've conditioned ourselves, and it's true, if you study it, they tell you if you're interested in getting people, you know, you need the dopamine fix. That's your intent by the numbers. If you look into the actual analytics, you'll see, yeah, people are watching your video, but they're not listening to you. So you have to grab them in the first 3 seconds. You know, I do this show completely wrong. Welcome to the Critical Thinking Forum. We're here Monday through Friday starting at 5 o'clock. Today's topic is, I already wasted 5 seconds. You're not supposed to do that. You got to get right to whatever hits them over the head in 3 seconds. That's what I'm telling you, that's what all the analysis says. So when we hear
that's what my old man tells me about the radio.
So when the president says that Sleepy Joe Biden allowed all these people across the border, I'm not allowing them across the border, and I'm going to kick them all out. I'm going to kick them all out. Well, you can say that in a short period of time, and people get that. But people don't know what I just explained here. A lot of people don't. You know it, Marshall, but a lot of people don't. What he actually did was reduce the number of immigration judges, making it more difficult to get people out of the nation. Now, why would you do that? If your intent is to really get people out of the nation, but what you really do impedes the ability to get people out of the nation, why would you do that?
I don't know. I would surmise because you don't actually want to get as many people out as you say you do.
And why would that be?
Because those people are critical to things like infrastructure, agriculture,
I disagree that that's the reason. I disagree that that's the reason.
Why do you
I would like to propose the reason is you need a foil.
Yeah, that's true. You need somebody you can point at, as the American president said, as the American president Douglas says, we'll find somebody to dislike, we'll find somebody to tell you who they're a bad person for, and that's what Trump is looking for. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
In other governments and in other countries, in many instances, the foil were the Jews.
Yeah.
Okay, you can't do that if you're the president of the United States.
You shouldn't, but apparently he does.
No, he doesn't. He doesn't accuse.
No, I'm not talking about the Jews. I'm saying.
I'm saying can I make my point before you respond to the point? So in other iterations of this kind of tactic, it was the Jews. You need a foil. The Jews are responsible for the economy going to shit. Well, he can't say that. So he's got to say the illegal immigrants are responsible for all this crime that's occurring in the nation, when in fact, by the way, not only on a per capita basis are they disproportionately lower in contributing to the crime rate, but the crime rate is lower than the impressions that we have.
Oh, much lower. Where I live, even though I live so close to Mexico, I can walk out of my house at 2:30 a.m., leave my door open, walk down the street, and have no fear that anybody will come in. Now, of course, I lock it because, you're supposed to lock your door, right? But I don't have any fear of being preyed upon, even though I live literally right next to Mexico.
So right? We can talk about the dirty immigrants. We could say that they come from shithole countries. We could say that they're eating dogs and cats in Ohio. We could say all of that, and we can gin people up. And if we're focusing on those horrible migrants for all the nasty things they are doing in this country, we could take our eyes off of other things that we don't want people to talk about. Because if you're the president of the United States in general, and for sure if you're this president, you know how to determine what the discussion on the national level will be.
When I was in Alan, I had a couple of contracts up in Boston.
Yeah.
So I was up there several times a year.
Yeah, Alan got stuck on the air by mistake. So that's what is that's what is going on here. I'm proposing that the president is looking for a foil. Why is it, to go back to Jules' example of a migrant who commits a heinous crime, like rape, that was his example. Why is it if an illegal immigrant, I'll use his terminology, commits a rape, it's a national story? And it's not just a national story. The national story is another illegal immigrant committed a rape. It's not inaccurate, the story's 100% accurate. How come if Jules or Gary commits the rape, it may not even be a local story, much less a national story? What makes that a national story? Why is it so important to beat the drum and talk about every time an illegal immigrant is driving a truck and kills somebody with the truck? Yeah, that person should have been driving the truck. 100%. But what happens if, God forbid, when Steve was driving a truck, he had done it? Would they say, a naturally born American citizen killed somebody? No, they would not. People are not taking the time to step back from the forest to see the trees, because we are being dished out headlines and slogans. And Jules is not incorrect. He's absolutely right, and it's worthy of our attention that if that illegal immigrant had been in the country, then that rape wouldn't have occurred. He's 100% right about that. That's true. There's no question that that's right. But to take it out of proportion, if in fact this administration really cared about deporting people, why would he have allowed the immigration courts to shrink? They were already overwhelmed.
Because they wouldn't give him the answer he wanted.
Exactly.
Well, the answer he wants is everybody has to go. The answer they were giving him was only some people have to go.
No.
And
It's
only
not
certain
the answer
periods
that he
of time.
wants. It's not the answer that he wants. Why didn't he just replace them? He could have taken 100 people, gotten rid of them, and replaced them with 100 people. You don't think that there are 100 lawyers who would take a job like that if offered it?
Well, I actually think the administration is kind of incompetent in doing some of that stuff.
Oh, it's incompetency.
No, I think some of it's incompetency, not all of it. I think some of the immigration stuff is intentional cruelty. I think some of the immigration stuff is intentional incompetency.
Yeah. Gary, I have a question. If you don't think it's
We'll
up
get to you in a second. We'll get to you in a second, Daniel. I want to give Alan an opportunity. Alan, are you back with us?
Yeah, sorry, I was wondering if you gotta call me when I was gone. It was worth it, $112 I did. I just need a simple question. Is ISIS formed by the law, or they just came up and they do it? Because I hear a lot of stuff. You heard me last time. I got caught in the border of Juarez and El Paso. It was at the same time Iran shoot something somewhere, and I was talking to a friend of mine, and he asked me if everything is okay. I said, yeah, we are all right. We're coming back. And we were in the van. The dentist provided us the transportation. This is the situation. I may be different than anybody else. When I was ready to come to United States, we had a class. First thing they told us, they said, you obey the law regardless of whatever. And I went there. I wasn't worried because I didn't have nothing to fear. They took me in there. There's two gentlemen who started questioning me, and I answered the question honestly and as best as my knowledge, very calm. We've been there 30, 40 minutes. And I didn't fuss or anything. And we became friends. And they asked me if they need help, if the FBI need help in Dallas, is it okay? They call me and, get my help. I said, it's a privilege. I don't understand screaming because I look different or I look different. Well, if they stop me, simply you cooperate and go along. If you don't have nothing to hide, you shouldn't be worried about. I was wondering if ICE is created by the law or somebody just came up and said, unleash these people on people. I'm not aware of it. I don't, sorry, my knowledge is zero on that.
I'm not exactly sure I know the question, but it's a federal agency. If that answers the question.
Thank you. Yes, that's what I wanted. But federal agencies, they have all the right to ask any question. It's not. I don't think it's against the law unless Marshall knows better.
It's a question of whether they have the right to detain people. Do they have the right to just stop somebody based on their looks? The court has ruled yes, they do. They have the right to do. They can racially profile. I believe the Supreme Court basically ruled that they can. Daniel, followed by Andrew.
Yeah, my question is, let's say, I'd say the fairest estimate of what the Trump administration could accomplish between now and the end of the term would be 2 million people. So, obviously that's not going to make much of a dent in whatever number we would agree, let's say around 14 million. So, what does America do then?
I'm sorry, your question eludes me.
Well, the idea here, I understand it. Okay, let me reframe it. The idea, as I understand it, is let's get rid of illegal aliens, right? Again, starting with the worst and all that prioritization stuff. Nonsense, but like the best number that could be achieved by the Trump administration is deporting 2 million people. Let's say we could disagree exactly what the number is, but let's say for the sake of argument, we decided on 14 million or so, 14 to 16 million that are in the country illegally. So the best you can get out of all this terror, which is what it is 2 million people, and suspension of civil liberties and everything else you can argue about. So at the end of the Trump administration, that's all you can get out is some 14, 18%, whatever that number turns out to be. What are you going to do about all the rest?
Yeah, well, I mean, you're not going to get rid of all of them, is your point. That's your argument, your question?
Question which leads to that obviousness, right? But it really comes down to an ownership by posing it as that, right? Because it's fine to say in theory, well, everybody has to, follow the law and everything else. Like, there's a lot of ways to deal with reparations, penalties, adjustments, what the law calls a remedy. And there's a way to absorb some of the people that are here, right? Why not start with that? It's like, oh yeah, we'll get everybody out and then start over. Well, that's 10 or 12 years from now at this pace, if you can even keep it up. I doubt you could keep it up.
And I don't know whether they intend to keep it up. And for sure, after this administration ends, who knows what the policy of the next administration is going to be, right?
Exactly.
And we've been very, very inconsistent in our approach to this issue, as we've been inconsistent in our approach to many issues.
And this is a worldwide thing to be fair to America, right? Like a worldwide thing about how immigration and cultural assimilation is handled. And, doesn't matter how much of an economic case, an incontrovertible economic case, that immigration enhances the economic power of a nation that is absorbing more people. But regardless, the cultural upheaval that happens is so much in the other direction, it takes years for that to become apparent.
That's true with every wave of immigrants, right?
Exactly. Because people don't like hearing the truth of this, but people on a per capita basis contribute more than they consume.
Yeah, and that's the way I would look at things. But then you have those who say, but what about this person, the outlier? What about that person? If that person wasn't in the country on welfare, then they shouldn't be here. They're not contributing. You can't. It's an argument that's very hard.
Yeah, it's fair. It's fair, but we can't let the perfect be the enemy of the good, right? There's some things we can agree on that we can move the ball forward with. And it should start from if God forbid, we were starting another country, we would want people to come to it, right? It's like we want to be able to absorb as many as we can sustain and support, not start with how do we get rid of everybody. That's not, again, this is going to prove it from the question I was asking basically, which is, here you have apparently the toughest on immigration ever going to be, and even these guys at this pace couldn't possibly take care of the problem just getting rid of everybody. It proves it.
Thank you, Daniel. We'll go to Andrew, followed by William.
Good afternoon, Gary. I trust you can hear me okay?
We've been through this.
Oh, did you hear Stevie Eiserman's gone, eh?
I had anticipated that, yes, but Steve Eiserman was canned as the general manager of the Detroit Red Wings. Had he not been Steve Eiserman, he would have been gone a long time ago.
Stevie Y's a hero for sure. This particular administration, I believe, has no regard for the course of the law. I think they tout the law when it's in their favor, but they ignore it when they have that feeling to do so. And I think that's evidenced by the fact that out of the 17, I guess it's 17 now, 16 of those investigations were summarily quoted as being justifiable prior to any investigation. So if you go in with that mindset, then it's no wonder that I think many of these agents may think that they're invulnerable to that direct watchfulness of these agencies and other agencies of the law, etc. It's been very successful in othering. I mean, I've heard the word people used quite a bit here when speaking of it, but I don't think that's how the administration views these illegal aliens. In fact, they're not people, they're rapists, they're drug dealers and murderers, and they eat cats and dogs. So when you use that sort of language, I think to a large extent it shows just where this administration is about these quote-unquote people, and their want to remove them. But I like Daniel's point that you can only get rid of 2 million or so, and what do you do with the rest? But also with the courts, reducing the courts, if you want people to be terrorized, and I'll use that word intentionally, then you reduce those court systems so that they don't get a fair hearing, they don't get in front of the due process that is afforded, that should be afforded them, and has been in the past, and then you lock them up in what is sanitizingly called detention centers, which I don't know that that's an adequate description of the environment in which these people are in. You just had another person die being transferred today, Venezuelan, from one detention center to another, and this is indicative too of the othering of people. If they're not people in your mind, then they don't deserve any considerations, and this is the situation that you now have in the United States. I would be interested, Scott had mentioned that 65% of Americans find this distasteful, and I would be curious as to how that falls in terms of the political demographics
to William, followed by Steve.
Gary, I think the word you were looking for before was scapegoating. Basically, scapegoating is the form of propaganda that was used against Jews in Europe before World War II, during World War II. Scapegoating is a tool often used by authoritarians. There have been a lot of good authors that have been writing on this, and I put a link in the chat, which lists a lot of books from New York Times Review. But like Ruth Ben-Ghiat is one of them that studied Italian fascism. Tim Snyder studied Eastern Europe in detail and wrote a great book about the time period between like Hitler through Stalin and all that went on in Eastern Europe. And Ann Snyder is probably one of the leading speakers and analysts and scholars of this area. And I think if we look at what has happened in other countries, it can be instructive. The history doesn't repeat, but there's certainly patterns that if we look at it, we can learn warning signs, learn from it, learn what to avoid. And when you have a president that talks about people as vermin in dehumanizing terms, that sets an agenda. That's how when my family had to flee from the Russian Empire before the USSR, we left for economic opportunity, but also for religious persecution and all kinds of targeting and discrimination against Jews. So we came to the United States, and that is something that is part of at least my culture, is to be aware of and to look for and to guard against a rise of strongmen, authoritarians, fascists. It's just part of the values and ethics that I was raised by. That when my father enlisted in World War II, he enlisted to fight fascism. He enlisted to fight for America. It's not, I was raised to believe that all of us should be anti-fascist, that we should fight fascism. And the Orwellian corruption of the language to somehow make it out like I'm the villain if I'm anti-fascist is bizarre. It's like 1984 type Big Brother redefinition of language to suit the person wielding power. So I think scapegoating was the point that you were looking for a word for it, and I think that is a technique that is used by people that are anti-democratic, that want to consolidate. And there's no single term for fascism, but and there were fascists before Mussolini, but they weren't called that. Mussolini kind of created the modern term of fascism, but
why are you injecting fascism into the conversation about ICE? Are you trying
because
to... So I'd like to finish the question, William, before you answer it. Are you trying to attach the label of fascism upon ICE?
I believe that yes. I believe that and let me finish. I believe that the climate, that the culture, that whatever training they got
or didn't get, the leadership has encouraged a culture that allows them to disregard constitutional constraints, constitutional norms, to act out of compliance with rule of law. And if we don't have rule of law, you know, some of the laws we like, some of the laws we don't, but what do we descend into?
Wait, how do you know they acted outside the rule of law? We don't know that.
Well, I know that when you shoot, even when you have a fleeing felon, that there are rules about how, at least
We didn't say there weren't rules. Just because there are rules doesn't make, and they didn't abide by the rules doesn't make them fascist.
Could you repeat your question?
What makes them fascist?
The authoritarian style, the mood that is set from the top. When you look at Bovino,
What exactly is the question? No, hold on. What exactly is the mood set from the top? Because it's Tom Holman setting that mood, and Tom Holman has served 5, 6. So what exactly is Tom Holman saying that makes it fascist?
Okay, there was a culture that was set during the Trump 2.0 administration, during the tenure of Kristi Noem and Gregory Bovino, and the massive hiring, where they set a tenor, a tone, an attitude, and a culture amongst the troops, the paramilitary troops.
They're not paramilitaries.
Yeah,
they're federal agents. They're different.
When you have people coming out,
paramilitaries implies something specific. It implies something like the SAD division of the CIA, the Special Activities Division. They're not the Special Activities Division of the CIA.
When you can quibble about the term, but when
It's
you
not
have people
quibbling.
that
Special Activities Division is
let me answer the
paramilitary.
question.
ICE is not paramilitary.
When you have people that are up-armored, they are armored as if they're going into Fallujah. They are armored.
They had been armored the entire time they've been serving, even under the Obama administration. They were up armored.
Not like
Yes,
like
they
today.
wore bulletproof
Not like
vests.
today.
They
And they
wore
weren't
guns.
wearing masks. They weren't hiding their identities, and that is presumptively a
And they partially hide their identities when they go after criminals who have drug cartel connections. I don't disagree with you that when you're confronting the abuelita down the street, you shouldn't be wearing a mask. But to say that that is somehow fascist is hyperbolic to say the very least.
There are examples within our own country where you can look to jurisdictions that have very good sets of rules for when it's allowed to or appropriate to wear a
and
mask
if we
and
could
conceal
get
identity.
cooperation from the
And
party
one
on this matter in
jurisdiction
response
where I live.
One, and I don't like the crosstalk to begin with, and secondly, we're running out of time, but thirdly, I want to correct a couple of things that were stated. With regard to the up-armoring, the Obama administration placed strict limits on federal agencies, this is according to PBS, acquiring military-style and heavily armored equipment, which ultimately resulted in the revocation of some previously provided tactical gear. But, William, continue yourself for a second, please. But to suggest that this is fascism that we are seeing, it's one thing to say, I don't like the manner in which ICE is operating. But when you throw in the term fascism, and you mention the popularization of the term fascism with regard to Mussolini, you are talking about early 20th century Europe fascist movements, right?
That was where the term was really put into our language, was from Mussolini, but it existed before Mussolini, and it's never been agreed upon, and there are species of it that have existed after Mussolini, like Stalin or Mao.
Okay, so if you look at the Britannica fascism overview, and I'm going to read this to you, and you tell me whether you truly believe this applies to the actions of ICE. According to the Britannica Fascism Overview, fascist movements prioritize the collective nation or race over individual liberties. Is that what we're dealing with now?
Yes, to some degree.
Some
Yes.
degree.
Yeah, wait. Britannica is giving, and you're asking me to respond to a multi-point article, so you're going through it one by one, and I would say, and I would have to read the article to actually respond in an intelligent way, but the nationalization, the creating of the underclass, the Untermenschen, the vermin, the language that's used,
By
used
ICE? By ICE?
by Trump and by the leadership.
Wait, now you're claiming that Trump's a fascist.
No, that's not what I said. I'm saying that the language that
you're
is used.
implying it.
No, I'm not implying, I'm saying that the language when he talks about people as vermin, when he tries to dehumanize people as groups, when he dehumanizes
That's implying it per your previous comment. You are implying he is a
I'm stating it directly, that
Okay,
is
then
a
great.
that
Then
is
used in your
by
chat.
fascists, and if you want me to respond to a multi-point article in Britannica, which I haven't read, I can go through it point by point, and maybe we should do a room where we all read the article in advance.
No, I don't want
Discuss
to read
it.
the article point by point with you, William. Let me give you the Merriam-Webster one-sentence definition of fascism. Can we do that?
We can see if it applies.
That's exactly what I want to do. Let's see if it applies. Fascism is a far-right, authoritarian, and ultra-nationalist political ideology. It is typically characterized by a dictatorial leader, strict societal and economic regimentation, militarism, and the forcible suppression of opposition. Does it apply?
Okay, if you believe that things can exist on a spectrum, and that the one Merriam-Webster.
No. You're not answering my question. It's a simple question. Does
The
this
simple
apply?
answer is that attributes of what Merriam-Webster describes as their definition of fascism have been incorporated into the culture of the people who are governing our country, and in particular running ICE. And if you look at the authors,
Tom Homan is a fascist. Tom Homan is a fascist.
I didn't say that. I'm saying that there are
then
elements.
they're not fascists. Then they're not fascists.
You always like to speak in binaries, and not everything is a binary. Things exist on a gradient, and there can be a backsliding towards something.
Okay, but if you interject the term fascism, I'm just asking you to back it up and not say, there's a spectrum, maybe it applies to this, maybe it doesn't apply to that. Is this a fascist organization or not?
Let's look at specific behaviors.
William, wait. I did not interject the term fascism. You did. I'm asking you whether you are labeling ICE a fascist organization. Yes or no? That's all I ask you.
I am saying that ICE is incorporating attributes.
I didn't ask you that.
I'm not saying
Why
that
do I ask you one thing and you
they don't fit the Merriam-Webster definition.
Then your answer is no, you're not.
No, that's not my answer.
Then your answer
putting
is
words
yes,
in my
you
mouth.
are.
I can answer. I am
No.
I'm not. You're putting words in my mouth.
Obfuscating, William.
You're putting words in my mouth. I'm
No,
saying.
I'm not putting words in your mouth. You're obfuscating. Yes or no? You are trying to label ICE fascist, or you're not. I'm not arguing that it is or it isn't. I'm just asking you, what are you saying? Clarify. Are you attempting to call ICE a fascist organization? Are you?
Either you are or you're not. I'm not asking you about the spectrum of the definition of fascism. I asked you a simple freaking question, and I can't get a simple answer.
You know it's not black and white.
I think I'm talking dark and not you. Is it raining outside? Yes or no? Well, it may be misty. Is it raining or not? I just wanted a simple yes or no. That went on for over 5 minutes, arguing something that I never even asked. And an earlier caller, old Raj, brought up that we were discussing one thing, and then people hijacked the discussion to discuss something else. At that time, that hijacking came from the right. This time, the hijacking came from the left. I try to be the most accommodating moderator on Clubhouse. I really do. I try to be accommodating, but I lose my patience over this nonsense because of this argument with this last caller. Agent and Dark just got screwed out of their opportunity to speak. You can say it's my fault as the moderator, and ultimately you're right, but I allowed this guy to hijack the conversation.
It's not black and white.
Okay, Dark, why don't we give the floor to you, and you could be William's defender?
It's fascistic behavior and certain things, but
Okay, Dark. Let me ask you a question, and then we leave. Are you interrupting me or not? Yes or no?
I am.
Okay, see? That's all you had to do, yes or no. Are you trying to label ICE fascist or not? That was the question. The question wasn't what the spectrum of fascism
It was nuanced. He said it was nuanced. It's not black and white. It's not yes.
The question, Dark. The question of whether he was labeling them fascist is not nuanced. Why? Or am I speaking a different language than everybody else today? I never lose
You're trying to put words in his mouth.
I'm not.
No, he was talking about it being fascist. Come on. It's not that difficult.
I'm not arguing that they are or they are not fascist. I'm asking him, stand up and answer my question. Are you saying they're fascist or are you not saying they're fascist?
Because he was willing to say Donald Trump was fascist, so you should be willing to say ISIS is fascist too. You should be willing to say it with your chest.
Right. He said Trump
is the point, you guys.
No, Victoria, it is the point.
The point is,
I fascist or they're not fascist.
The question,
and if you're going to accuse them of being something like the brown shirts, then you should actually have some proof for it.
Well, the point is, I asked a question, I wanted an answer, and I'm going to be a prick from now on.
Well, Gary,
I'm not going to put up with this bullshit anymore.
Gary, the article you read about the fascism, it's exactly Iran's government. Is ISIS like Iran? I doubt it. For God's sake, give us a break. Go for it. You did a great job.
Yeah, I'm very frustrated today, doesn't show. Folks, we're here 5 o'clock New York time, Monday through Friday. If I've recovered by tomorrow, we'll be back at 5 o'clock.
Oh, he didn't close it this time.
an exciting episode of the John Kitover podcast.
Okay, so give me. So show me. I asked you to show me. Like you asked me to don't be too serious. I did this for 5
Your
seconds.
meeting is about removing the current people from Gaza. I'm talking about Palestinians that left
that's what he's reading.
Palestine many years ago.
That's what he just
What
read.
he's reading about was about
That's what he just read.
Palestinians in Gaza.
No, he's talking about the Palestinians being hosted there.
That's right.
They're talking about the fuck. Shut the fuck up, Stanley.
No,
He's talking about Palestinians.
You're just.
They're being hosted there. They're not fucking paying them.
Hey,
Stop
okay,
the
hold
fucking
on.
lie.
That's right, man.
Oh my god, he's so annoying, Stanley. Daniel, can you read with you?
Okay, children.